Hey guys, how's it going? Today I wanted to do a quick video talking about New Jerusalem, the Camp of the Saints, where is this, as well as the Battle of Gog and Magog and how that's going to look like. So I'll just get to it now. I believe that New Jerusalem is in the north and it's hovering in the sky. So it's up in the sky in the north. And I believe New Jerusalem and the Camp of the Saints is the same thing. So the saints are gathered in New Jerusalem, in the holy city that's up in the sky, and that's the camp of the saints. And I will show you here why I think that. But first, let's take a look at a few things here. So I also believe, I think that Polaris, the star Polaris, that might potentially be something with New Jerusalem, could be New Jerusalem. I don't know. Even if it isn't, it's, I'm just thinking because it is the northern star, it's a little bit different than the others. But even if it isn't, I still think it's hovering up in the north. We also see the northern lights and things like that coming down. So that gives us a clue as well where New Jerusalem is. But I want to get into something I found here when this new city was created, when New Jerusalem was created exactly. I found this in Revelation chapter 15, verse 5. And after that I looked, and behold, the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open. This is New Jerusalem. This is the city, and I'll prove it here. Look at Revelation 21, verses 2 to 4. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adored for her husband. And then see where it says in verse 3, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he that dwell with him. So as you can see, this is talking about the tabernacle of God. And so that uses the same language when New Jerusalem comes down again. Uses the same language here. The tabernacle of the testimony in heaven was open. So I believe this is when New Jerusalem was created. And that brings me to my next point of, this was actually like a back then it was like a pre-wrath rapture. I know the futurists have these debates these days, but this actually proves that back then it was a pre-wrath rapture here, because look what it says here. It says that the angels had the plagues for the wrath of God, and it shows actually here the saints, those who overcame, those that have gotten victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark, were standing on the sea of the glass, having the harps of God. So they were already glorified at this time, before this wrath was poured out. And so I find that very interesting. And then here it says, what I also find interesting? It says that they were standing on glass, standing on a sea of glass. I think that this is referring to the firmament, firmament of the earth, that they were standing on here. And also, doesn't that make sense then that New Jerusalem then is up in the sky, and it's above the firmament? And doesn't it make sense like why the northern lights look like this? If it's above the firmament and the northern lights are coming from the city, you see how it's kind of coming down as if it's like coming down on glass, like from glass, like it's being reflected from glass, like from the firmament. I find that really interesting. That's kind of how it looks like here. And it also says that they were standing on the sea of the glass, which I think is the firmament. And so we see that this is when New Jerusalem was created, and then after it was created and they were there, then they were pouring the wrath. The angels were pouring the wrath of God for them on earth. So this was like a pre-wrath rapture back then. I just find that very interesting. But yeah, that brings me to Revelation 20, verse 9. This is when they were compassing the camp of the saints and the beloved city. So we see here that they compass the camp of the saints about and the beloved city, so it's the same thing, right? When this happens, the battle of Gog and Magog. And that brings me to my next point, where I don't think that this is going to be a literal battle against the saints. It doesn't say that here, right? It says they went up on the breadth of the earth, so we know in the Arctic in the north, and they compassed the camp of the saints and about in the beloved city. It doesn't say that they're battling against them. And I know that there's I'll get to the Ezekiel prophecy, but it doesn't say that here. It just says that they compassed the camp of the saints about in the beloved city, and then fire came down out of heaven and devoured them. So my theory is that this is actually just going to be a general war in the Arctic. It's not going to be, because I'll talk about the prophecy here in Ezekiel, but dual prophecy is, it doesn't always be, it's not always exact, like to the word. Like, why I'm saying that is because this happened already. Ezekiel 38 to 39, this happened. This was an event that actually took place. This is talking about horses and horsemen, right? That sort of thing that is not happening today. So this actually happened, but this is dual prophecy. But when it comes to dual prophecy, it's not exact. Like, it's not exactly attacking the saints. It's not going to look like exactly the same thing. It just kind of gives us a hint of the future of kind of what it's going to happen. But this is exact, right? And it doesn't say that they're going to attack the saints here. It just says that they encompassed the saints about the beloved city, and fire came down out of heaven. And so I believe there will be a war, but I think it's going to be a general war in the Arctic based on other stuff, the Northwest Passage, oil, things like that. And it does say that they compass the camp of the saints about in the beloved city, because they do. If they're in the Arctic and they have a war up there, and the new city, New Jerusalem, is up in the sky, then they are encompassing the camp of the saints, right? And I think that this gives us a hint when the end of the little season is. When this war happens, at the end of that war, like while that happens, that's when the end comes, and that's when God will blow fire down on the earth for the end, right? So that's what I think. And we see some predictive programming here with this in the news and stuff like that. They talk about North America's preparing for an Arctic battle. They're not. This is predictive programming. They're not hiding it. There's a lot of news stories about this, right? And this is what this is gearing up to, the Battle of Gog and Magog. I believe, with what my last video about Magog being America and its respective leader, I believe that's they're going to be involved in this for sure, and that's what I think is going to happen. And that brings me to the Ezekiel 38 to 39. See, that's a dual prophecy, but it's not like exact, right? It just gives us hints because this stuff literally happened. So that's the way I see it. I do find it interesting, some of the language here about how some of these ones, these nations back then, how they were talking about, like, they were involved in trade. They were merchants. It just sort of reminds me of the World Trade Organization. There's just little hints like that, from this prophecy and stuff, but it's not always exact. Kind of like Joshua too, like you have this and the second day. So Joshua 6 verses 14, and the second day they compassed the city once and returned into the camp. And so they did 6 days. This sounds very similar, even though it's not exactly the same, right? Compassing the city. And then look at verse 24, and they burnt the city with fire, like God burning fire down, right? So this is like dual prophecy because it's kind of similar, but this happened. This isn't exactly the same, right? So I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to be a war in the Arctic. It's a general war, and they are encompassing the city because the city's up in the sky. They're not actually literally attacking the saints. It's just a general war, for whatever reason, the Northwest Passage, whatever. There's oil up there, things like that. The number of whom is the sand of the sea. There's going to be a lot of people involved in the war, a lot of nations, things like that. And then the end will happen. God's not going to blow fire at them because of the war. It's just showing that's just the end, right? God blows fire down on them, on everyone on earth, and we'll probably be at that moment. We'll get resurrected, us believers, at that moment when that happens, most likely. Or just before he blows the fire, kind of like a pre-wrath, like it was like a pre-wrath back then in the time of the tribulation, and then and then the wicked will be judged, right? They'll be judged, and the end will happen. Then the new earth and new heavens, right? So that's when this happens. Revelation 21, 2-4. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. That's when that happens, after the fire, right? That comes down. The fire destroys the earth. God creates a new earth, right? New heavens, and then this comes down on new earth, right? That happens at the very end. So let me know what you guys think about that. But yeah, that's the way I see it. So, all right, God bless.